first introduce you to or reintroduce you to SCORE. This is kind of what you're seeing in front of you. See our mission and values statement. SCORE's mission is to foster vibrant small business communities through mentoring and education. Again, we aim to give every person the support they need to thrive as a small business owner. Small businesses drive our national economy through business formation, job creation, and wealth building. Small businesses are critical to vibrant communities in our society. And, I don't know if you knew this or not, but our small businesses really make up about 80% of employers in our economy. So the small business owner is certainly very, very important. And SCORE is here to help to support those businesses and those business owners through a variety of different ways and methods, and our workshop series being one of those ways. So SCORE has the largest network of free volunteer small business mentors in the nation. And so no matter what stage of your business you are in, whether you are just thinking, I would like to start a business of my own, and I'm not kind of sure which direction I want to go, I'm not sure what step one is, or if you're established in business and at this point you're looking at being able to scale, or there are just certain aspects that you would like a little more assistance on, you can get a SCORE mentor. Or if you're at that point in your business where you're looking to exit the business and you're trying to figure out the best way in order to do that, you can certainly sign up. And we have free SCORE mentoring and mentors that can help you do all of those things by you just going ahead and filling out the inquiry and trying to find out, and we try to find out what you need and how we can connect you with folks that can help you do that. All right. SCORE is also for everyone. We have Black entrepreneurs, Hispanic entrepreneurs, women entrepreneurs, veteran entrepreneurs, and that's just to name a few, and so SCORE is here for everyone. And that's kind of the point of that particular slide. And a little later at the end of the presentation, I'll show you how to get out there to the SCORE website and be able to make a request for a mentor. But we are going to get underway with our topic for today, which is culture and leadership. And this particular session is part one in a series of about 5 upcoming conversations. And so we are going to start with culture and leadership because this is kind of the foundational piece, right? And so tonight, this is what our agenda will tentatively look like. We're going to have a little discussion about culture and what we mean when we're talking about culture, so that we can make sure that we're speaking from the same space. We're going to have a little bit of a discussion about leadership, right? And then we're going to put those things together and talk about some next steps, right? So this is just going to be a very broad conversation that's going to, get you thinking, but then certainly there are opportunities to go deeper if that's something that you're interested in doing. And again, we can talk about that a little bit later on as well. And so again, my name is Karen Cross Hatton, and I am a SCORE volunteer, but I am also an entrepreneur in my own right, in that I am the owner and operator of Legacy Builders Coaching and Consulting. And I am in my startup phase, like many of you may be. However, I have been in industry for a very long time. I've done training. I'm an adjunct professor in business. So I have lots and lots to bring to the table, lots of experiences and lots to be able to share with you through my own work and experience. And I'm hoping that you all are here to share with me your experiences as well. So we're going to get underway and we're going to talk about company and organizational culture and exactly what we mean by that. So when we're talking about company culture, um, this is what we're talking about, right? So a company culture is a set of attitudes, values, beliefs, goals, and other characteristics that a company or organization follows to create a gratifying work environment. So that's kind of the general definition that we're going to be working from. Um, but I would like to hear from you all. When you hear company culture, right? And we hear that over and over and over again to the point that sometimes it can almost sound like a cliche. But from your experience, how would you, in your own words, kind of define company culture? And what are some of the things that you feel are important when you are thinking about the culture of your company or the company that you may work for? Go ahead and drop your responses in the chat, or if you'd like to unmute, I'm going to be quiet so you can do that and share your thoughts. Now, come on. I know you didn't just come for me to talk at you for a few hours, did you? Desiree, it looks like you're trying to say something. It looks like you took yourself off mute, but I can't hear you yet.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Okay, when I think about culture, I think about the diverse people, the different
Mhm.
diverse people, and also team building, um, as well as a collaboration and just just putting it all together with attitude and characteristics of the different diverse people that you work for.
Okay. All right. So diversity and team building, two key words that I took from what you said. Thank you for sharing. Anybody else want to add to that?
We have a soft skills in the chat saying, would a mission statement be a representation of company culture?
Absolutely.
Really. Yeah.
Absolutely. Your mission statement is what is going to be the foundation of the culture that you create within your organization. Absolutely. Trust and to inspire and not command and control. I love that, James. I love that. Tell me a little bit more about what you mean about that. Trust and inspire, not command and control. Tell me a little bit more about that. You can drop it in the chat or you can take yourself off mute and just talk to me. James, are you there? Okay, well, James,
I,
I'm guessing it's probably jumping in the chat. So I'm gonna keep my eye on the chat, but we're gonna go ahead and move forward. But yes, all the things that you said, it's about the diversity, it's about trust, it is about aspiring and not commanding and controlling. And yes, the mission statement is at the very core of that. And yes, Barb, you like to say that these are shared values. So important, Barb. You hit the nail on the head. They are shared values and beliefs, right? Because again, it stems from what the mission is. It stems from what those values are of the company. And yes, they have to be shared with all those within the organization. Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit more, right? All right, let me go forward here. There. So, and again, so when we're talking about organizational culture, that refers to, and I'm so glad that the mission came up, right? It refers to the company's mission, the company's objectives and expectations, and the values that guide its employees, right? Businesses with an organizational culture tend to be more successful than less structured companies because they have systems in place that promote employee performance, productivity, and engagement. And so having a strong culture motivates everyone to do their best work, right? And so we can see how important the culture is, and it's not just cliche. It's not just we just come in and we just are winging it every day, right? This is what our entire existence is based on. This is what we want the feel and the look of our organization to be. This is how we want our employees and our clients, our customers to feel, and everybody should be able to kind of get a sense of what your culture is based on that, those definitions, the mission that you put out there, the vision that you share with the world, all of those things, go to and aid in building the culture, right? And so why is company culture important, right? So here are 8 reasons that we see from what other folks say as to why company culture is important, but I want to hear what your ideas are. Why do you think that it's important to even have conversations about company culture?
Because you're going to be working with a diverse group of people.
Absolutely.
Culture
Absolutely.
is important as far as communication, identifying, just identifying the different, the different diverse of the people. What might work for one may not work for another. What you might say to one may not, you can't say to another. So that's important.
That is important. That is important. Making sure that everyone is on the same page. Absolutely. And employee retention.
Intention.
Ding, 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 ding. You guys are on fire. Absolutely. All of these things are very, very important because it costs the company a lot to train someone, bring them in to do a job, and then lose them and see them walk out of the door. Right? So
Right.
employee retention is absolutely key, and making sure that people are on the same page and understanding what the expectations are and that everybody is focused on the same goals. But again, here are some additional reasons why company culture is important. Number one, it increases employee engagement. And again, what is employee engagement? What is employee engagement? And I see Barb is back at it. When employees buy into the culture, it helps everyone to be successful. Absolutely. And that's a part of that engagement piece, right? Everyone feeling respected. Absolutely, Sandra. Everybody feeling respected, right? And so culture is important because it can decrease turnover. Again, that retention piece. It gives a strong brand identity, right? What is your brand associated with? What is it known for, right? It gets elevated productivity because everybody feels respected. Everybody feels like they're part of the team. Everybody understands their role in the success of the business overall, right? It has transformational power, right? It gives folks the opportunity to be top performers. You see the cream rise to the top, right? You have to have effective onboarding and a healthy team environment. And yes, employee engagement makes everyone feel a part of company success. Absolutely. Absolutely. And now it's more important than ever because what we do know is that the idea of the traditional company structure has changed. Ever since COVID, folks are really trying to find their way, right? And yes, it can have a direct impact on morale, I think, as B. Cruz was trying to say. And if you don't, what it says, if you don't have it, it can cause low morale. Absolutely. Absolutely. And for people to be able to be on the same page, to know what's going on around them, to feel like they have a voice, to feel like they are making a contribution and that you care what they say, especially when folks are on the front line for you and working with you in your business. Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much. So let's go forward, right? All right. So how can one improve company culture, right? If you are a person in a leadership position at work, there are a few steps that you can follow to ensure that your team achieves success in the workplace. And again, number one is always communication, to be a good communicator, right? To listen to the concerns and ideas of others, to provide feedback in real time for people. You know, people want to know how they're doing. They want to hear, hey, good job. They want to hear, oh, you know what? This is something that we've always done it this way, but they want to hear about new ideas. Are there ways that we can do some things differently? Can we improve in any way? How can we make the job easier for you? And how can we be more productive, but also to be consistent? Now, here's my question to you. Does a person or is a leader defined always by their position, or are there other ways that we identify leaders within our organizations?
Yeah.
And again, drop it in the chat or go ahead and yeah, Desiree, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, there's other ways you can identify. It's just by going by performance.
Okay. Okay. So performance so tell me a little bit more about that.
If you open up, if you got a type of team building where you open up and just see what each employee does, and one go overboard and can do something that another person can do, that person is showing that it can do something more. That person is showing that there's more to them. So I would offer the opportunity for them to do more, and to give them, the more you give them, the more they may shine or the more they may lack. Give
Okay.
them the opportunity to do it.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right. Anybody else they agree, disagree, have anything else to add with what Desiree said? Let's talk about this for a minute.
Sometimes when you give people more work,
Mm-hmm.
it can sometimes drain them,
Mm-hmm.
and it can make them overwhelmed, even though you know they're probably capable of doing it. If they don't have this self-assurance as you do, it might be overwhelming to them.
Okay. Okay. All right. And that's a fair and great point, Michelle. Thank you for joining the conversation. And you're right, it can lead to burnout. I see some things in the chat also. Let's see what we have. And then I see, James, I see your question about recommendations on improving communication. We're going to circle back to that in just a little bit. But yeah, a leader is also known by the service they provide to their employee. Absolutely. Right. We all know that within an organization, you have folks that other employees listen to and other employees follow. Whether or not that person has a title or not, there are people that are listened to within the organization, right? Does that make them leaders?
I'm going to say yes,
Absolutely.
whether
I'm
it's
gonna say
negative
yes.
or positive.
Absolutely correct. Whether it is negative or positive, you are absolutely right. And when you have somebody that is on and they are getting the buy-in from other folks around your company, around your business, and whether it is positive where they're saying, all right, everybody, we can do this, and they're pumping up everybody, and we're going to go in here and we're going to do this, and teamwork makes the dream work, and all of those things, or whether they're saying, you know what, I'm not going to take this anymore, and this is some bull, and I'm leaving, and whatever. Those are the leaders within your organization, right? And they are not to just be ignored, because they have a lot of influence within your company and within the company culture, right? As we're talking about it. And so, to your point, Desiree, yes, you want to find ways to reward those folks that are stepping up. but you really want to develop an entire team that everybody steps up all the time, right? And so
Right.
you're not just rewarding a few people, but this is a team effort. We are all focused and going in the same direction. And to Michelle's point, you don't want to burn out your top performers. You don't want to burn out the folks that will show up just because you know they'll show up and they're the low-hanging fruit for you. You know, anything that you ask them to do, they're going to do, right? You want to be able to get everybody operating and working at the same level, right? Now, they may come with a different set of skills, right? But how do you work from a strengths-based perspective to strengthen your organization, your leaders, and then as a byproduct, improve and increase productivity? How do you do that? Yes, Barbara, exactly. Everyone has different strengths, and it's key that that employer can recognize those strengths, right? And all too often, what happens, you get hired into a position, and this is the work that you're doing. And so everybody looks to you for the job that you're in without really considering all the things you've done before you got there, right? You bring with you a wealth of information, experience, right? Exposure that could be useful in other ways. But if nobody knows that, if nobody's trying to understand who is in the building, then you can really be sleeping on all of these gifts and treasures that you have right there within your own organization, right? All right. And so communication, I want to go back because I don't want to lose James' question, right? So how do you improve communication within the workplace? Who has some suggestions that they'd like to offer, James? You can drop it in the chat or feel free to unmute and join the conversation. My SCORE mentor has had me take the Clifton's Strength Finders. Yes, which I can't recommend him enough on. Yeah, you can't commend him. Yes, and I've taken it as well. I've taken it as well. And that is a great, great tool to use. And it helps you know who's on your team and what strengths they bring to the table and how everybody has the opportunity to show up and work within their strength. We're always thinking about how we can make somebody improve in a different way rather than looking at how we can utilize their strengths to the advantage of the company and the team, right? Because what do we know about when people are operating in their zone of genius, right? When they're operating from their strengths and they are achieving results and everybody is noticing, oh my gosh, you're really, really good at that. What does that do for your organization? Desiree, Michelle, Kiana, James, Barb, what do you think?
I think it will help keep the floor open for communication. I think that like
Absolutely.
in the past group discussions, you have team meetings, one-on-ones, performance, and something in that category.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Toastmasters. Yes. So I see we're going back a little bit to what James said. Yes, Toastmasters can help to communicate, but when you're talking about within an organization and within the culture, what are some things, right? How do you communicate what needs to be shared with the masses? What are some of the best ways?
Team meetings and group meetings.
Team meetings, absolutely. Group meetings, absolutely. Town halls, right? Newsletters, right? We get inundated with emails all the time, right? And so sometimes when we're sharing things, people, depending on who they're coming from, and I would say we're all a little guilty of it, right? If we are inundated all day long with emails, some are more important to us depending on who they come from, right?
Right.
And so sometimes emails can be a good way to communicate, sometimes not so much, because sometimes it gets pushed down to the bottom, right? It gets lost in translation. But the ways that you can have to really have some more human interaction are also great ways to be able to communicate, right?
Right.
And the more that we can do that and do it on a consistent basis, not just once in a while, because as somebody said in the chat earlier, a bad culture can lead to, it could cause a lot of gossiping between team members. Well, that's not something that you want to happen, right? You want to get in front of that. You don't want it to be a gossip situation where I heard this or I heard that. Your leaders and again, that communication comes from the top down and the bottom up, right? Everybody should be communicating and being able to, you shouldn't have to guess about what's going on. You should be able to have those conversations. You should be making sure that the folks that are in leadership are sharing as they, as they can. Transparency is one of those things that is key. People just want to know what's going on, the good, the bad, and the ugly. They don't want to hear it on the streets. They want to hear it from you. They don't want to hear from their friends. I heard they're doing such and such at your company. I can't tell you how many times that has happened to me. Somebody outside the institution or the organization has heard something that I had no idea was going on, and I'm working there. So being able to be open, transparent, and communicate and figure out ways that best work within your organization to get the messages out, and then also allow for an opportunity for folks to give feedback, ask questions, and to be kept in the loop and feel like they're a part of that process. Okay. So we're going to move on and talk about leadership. But before we leave that discussion of culture and communication, did anybody have any last thoughts or questions that they wanted to share? Okay. Oh, I see. Okay. Let's see. What happens if you're not very good in communicating in group meetings? The dominant personalities speak the most, and it's difficult to get your points. That is a very good question, James. And you are right. If you don't feel good about communicating in group meetings, well, then we have to talk about how do we structure our meetings, right? If you are a leader in that, or you have the opportunity to go to your leadership and say, I don't always feel comfortable communicating in these group meetings, but you find ways to, within the meeting, be able to make sure that everybody's voice can be heard. Whether that be done where you have an opportunity for everybody to just kind of do a round table, right? Where each person can, you open the floor up so that in that round table, each person has an opportunity to voice their opinion or share some things that they're concerned about, but you open the floor up. You can also provide suggestion boxes or some other, method to where somebody can send you a note anonymously to be able to share with that leadership, and they can address it from there, right? Because you are right, the dominant personalities, but having control in those meetings and finding ways that work. There are some places where you have kind of like the talking stick, and whoever has the stick is the person who has the floor, right? And nobody can kind of jump in. Or establishing ground rules even in your meetings, in terms of what those meetings are going to look like. Everybody has a chance to speak. These are the things that, we are understand. We're going to be respectful. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. And you establish ground rules in those meetings that kind of clear the space and the path for those that, don't want to fight for their space to be heard, to be able to have space to speak. So those are some suggestions I have. Does anybody else have anything to add, offer, or been in places where you've had a good meeting structure where everybody had a chance to be heard that you want to share?
On something like that, I would suggest a structured meeting where everybody has a limit, a time limit, to say what's ever on their mind. When the time is over, we have to move on. the
Okay.
next.
Okay,
That,
and
that,
that could be a
that-
suggestion.
yeah.
Anybody else? Okay. All right, very good. And again, as you think of things, drop them in the chat. If you didn't get an opportunity to say, drop them in the chat so that we can catch up all of those things. Set up office hours, absolutely. Setting up office hours could be a great way for you to be able to communicate directly with your leadership. That would require your leaders to set up office hours for folks to be able to come in and be able to have whatever conversation they'd like to have. I personally, on my job right now where I am, I set up virtual office hours. There are a certain time every week for folks to be able to drop in, and they can drop into my office, or they can just log on from wherever they are virtually, and we can have a conversation. And then we can also schedule time if that conversation is going to take more than the time that we have allotted to share. But being able to have those open door policies and create time, because as leaders, we know that oftentimes it's too difficult to just have people randomly stopping by your office, right? Because you're in the middle of things, you have deadlines, you have things that you have to get done. But being able to carve out and have some intentional time for people to be able to come in and communicate with you could be key, that you have that time specifically set aside for folks. And if no one comes, you get to reclaim that time. But if folks do come, you know that it's time well spent and that you've already allotted for that time within your day, right?
I found that didn't work.
I'm sorry, say that again.
I used that method and it didn't work. It
Okay,
didn't work for a group, when you with a large organization, it didn't work.
okay, so tell me a little bit about
I came up with a suggestion box
okay.
so people could, and I put the suggestion box in the bathrooms, in the
Mm-hmm,
cafeterias,
mm-hmm.
just so they can get some suggestions or concerns. And that way, at the end of the day, I will grab those concerns on my free time and read them.
Okay.
I mean,
And so,
that works more so than if you got a large company and you want someone to walk in your office. Everybody don't feel comfortable doing that because everybody think you in there telling on somebody. So, that I ran into a lot too. So that's why I developed a suggestion box.
right. Well, here's the other thing, right? Here is one way that you can do. You can set up one-on-one meetings with
Yeah,
everybody on your team. So that way, everybody has a one-on-one set up with you to be able to come in and discuss and get feedback on performance, to be able to talk about. Now, the way that I personally conduct one-on-ones is the one-on-ones for me are the employees meeting, right? They
right
come
there,
in with
performance.
their own agenda and we talk through the things that they want to discuss, but I'm also prepared to give them feedback, to provide information, to do some things. And in that way, it is fair across the board and everybody has that time scheduled. And it's not about somebody coming in and tattling or anything else, but everybody gets that one-on-one time with you and that opportunity to be able to discuss whatever may be of concern to them. And it's just you and them. So it's not about not having to participate. If it's the two of you there, they're going to have to participate. Does that make sense?
I would use that. I use that technique on one-on-one performance, on a performance review. When I do that, either they yearly or I do
Mm-hmm.
they quarterly. That's when they can give feedback too, as well as we find out how they're doing. And anything that they talk about they go, where they want to see themselves in within the next year, or where they plan to want to go the next 5 years. I work on their goals. Whatever
Okay.
they say, that's what we working on.
Okay. So why not be able to do it monthly? Like, especially if you're in a large corporation, that may not be able to, you may even not be able to get to everybody weekly, right?
Right.
But if you're using it for mid-year reviews and annual reviews, when are you having those other conversations and giving that feedback and talking about, when are you creating touch base, so that
I do that in team building,
okay,
meeting. We usually have either a monthly meeting and I can send out an agenda beforehand, and then this is what we're going to discuss. And
okay,
then there's other suggestions that they can come to the table with.
okay. All right. So that sounds like, certainly a great alternate. And, again, you have to know where you work, what that organization is, and what the culture is, and what that culture of communication is, and what works. So tonight, we're just throwing out some suggestions and things that you
Right.
can try, that you can think about. Everything is not going to work within every organization, and depending on what it is that you're doing, because it's easier if you're in an office environment than if you are in an environment where you're looking at a supply chain, right? Or where you're looking at people that are on an assembling line, and it's difficult to get them off the line to have those discussions. So, again, we're just talking about some alternate ways to be able to address some of those things. But we're going to go ahead and we're going to talk now. We're going to move into the leadership portion of the conversation. And we're going to talk about, what is leadership, right? And how are we defining leadership for our discussion tonight, right? But thank you so much, Desiree, for all your input and insights. And I'm looking for you to continue to share, and anyone else that would like to share as we move forward, right? So what is leadership? Leadership is the art of motivating a group of people to act toward achieving a common goal, right? And in a business setting, this can mean directing workers and colleagues with a strategy to meet the company's needs. Now, that's certainly not the only way. And we talked about leadership, right? Leadership is the art of motivating a group of people to act toward achieving a common goal. And we've already said, right, that we can have leaders in our organizations that don't necessarily have titles that people will follow towards whatever that common goal is that they've set up, right? So when we're talking about leadership and the folks that we actually have designated as leaders within our organizations, within our companies, and we have said, these are the folks that we want to lead, what are the things that you think that we should be doing so that we are ensuring that our teams are following the folks that we've designated, as opposed to the folks that are leaders by their own design, right? By their personality, or the kind of just the way that they show up. What are some things that we should be doing and thinking about when we're thinking about leaders within our organization? Now, y'all know I'll wait.
When you say think about
Mhm.
leaders and what and in what capacity are you talking about? Are you talking about the leaders that we have that we have uh put in front, how they should come back to us, or
Right.
leaders
So
that
I'm
we
talking.
picking, or
Yeah, good question. So what I'm talking about is as small business leaders, right? Or small business owners, and you are putting folks in charge of whatever it may be, right? You have designated and hired folks to lead, whether they're managers, supervisors, your second in command, whoever, you have out there. What are some of the things that what are some of the things we need to be doing to ensure that our leaders are leading in the way that we expect?
follow up,
Follow up.
constant communication,
Okay.
one-on-one. Yeah, you
Yes,
trusted this person to lead your company.
that's correct.
It has to be some type of structure there.
Right.
That's
Very
like
good.
handing him $1 million and say, hey, okay, go for it.
Right. Michelle, I see that you were unmuted. Did you want to add to the conversation?
Yes, I always feel that there need to be policies and procedures in place. There need to be some absolute training and follow up, like Desiree say, follow up after the training to make sure that they comprehending what it is that you're trying to do. And it also, they need to have a buy-in. If they
Yeah.
don't have a buy-in into your vision and your mission of your company, then it will be hard for them to really be leaders in your company.
Absolutely. You both hit those things right on the head. Absolutely. Because here's what happens oftentimes, right? you have an employee that is very, very good at the job that you've given them to do, right? And then you give them a promotion. And you promote them based on the work that they've done, but not necessarily, you haven't necessarily seen them as a leader. You haven't necessarily seen them as far as interacting with other people. You haven't seen them, because remember, if you're putting them in leadership roles, the expectation is that they have other people to lead, right? We can't make the assumption that just because I'm good at whatever this task is that I've been given to do, that I'm going to be able to share that with others, that I'm going to be able to lead others, that I'm going to gain the buy-in of others to do this, right? You can't make the assumption that they're able to show somebody else how to do what it is that they do when they're coming in with a different level of skill. Does that make sense to everybody? Can I get a thumbs up in the chat or something?
That makes sense. It makes
Okay,
sense.
absolutely. So we have to be very intentional about the leaders that we designate in our organization, but we also have to be able and willing to give them the tools that they need to be leaders. Right? Because when we don't, we miss huge opportunities, and we can oftentimes do more damage within our organization than good when we are not pouring into those leaders. Does that make sense? All right, fantastic. So let's take a little look about the difference between leadership and management, right? Because sometimes we're calling people leaders that are managers, and vice versa, right? So when we're talking about leadership, now leadership, that person may or may not be a manager, and we've alluded to that earlier. They must, though, inspire followers. They emphasize innovation. They may be unconcerned with preserving existing structures, right? They typically operate with relative independence, and they may be less concerned with interpersonal issues versus managers, right? Who, again, may or may not be a leader. They may be there to manage a process. They may be there to manage a task, but they may not be leaders within that organization. They are just managing something for you. They may or may not inspire those under them. They emphasize rationality and control. They seek to work within the preserved existing corporate structures. They typically link, they're just kind of a link in that corporate chain of command, not really a lot of voice, not really a lot of direction. They're just kind of going to do what they've been told to do. And they may or may not, or they may be more concerned with interpersonal issues than other things. So when we talk about interpersonal issues, what are we talking about? Right, micromanaging, exactly. So there is definitely you can see the differences, right? When we talk about what it looks like to manage and what it looks like to lead, right? All right.
Question.
Yes.
Can a person be one in one situation and the other in another?
Absolutely. And there are times when we have to be that, right? But it should be fluid. We should be able to understand that there are times when we are leading in situations, and then other times when we are managing in situations, and it's called situational leadership, right? So yes, that is a possibility. And Barb says, be clear about your expectations for them and their expectations of the kind of support that they are expecting. Absolutely. And the kind of support they're expecting from you. Absolutely. Micromanaging, that's a biggie, right? Because people who manage a lot tend to micromanage more than leaders who feel confident that they have the right team in place, they have the right folks in place, they come to the table with an understanding that there is more than one way to get a task done, right? But they give folks some autonomy to be able to get the task done, right? They don't necessarily spell it out for you, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, but they say, here is what the end goal is. This is what we need to do. Let's brainstorm. Let's talk about how we're going to get there. And now let's go out there and do the work, right? They inspire folks to be able to operate within their zones of genius and be able to show up in a strengths-based way to be able to deliver the very best of themselves to you in those scenarios. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Okay. Any questions or comments on that?
I do.
Yes.
In my own personal journey, I
Mhm.
found that um, I came to the job from past jobs that I was definitely a leader.
Mhm.
So that's the type of personality I have with my team. But I found that in my last job that didn't work, and I had to be a manager.
Okay.
Um, because they couldn't work on their own. And
Okay.
even though I felt they could, and I don't believe that they could thought they could, but it was always if I didn't tell them what to do, they didn't know what to do.
Mhm.
So how do you motivate that type of team?
That is an excellent question and an excellent example. And I'm going to open it up to the floor. I want to know what you all think, and then I will share some of my thoughts. But what anybody else? Dr. Garrett, Barb, Brett, James. How do you create leaders out of teams that feel like they need a manager? Did I summarize that right, Michelle?
How do you create
Yes,
teams?
pretty much.
Okay.
How do you create teams?
Any thoughts? Any thoughts? Wait a minute, I lost my chat. Hold on, let me try
I
to
hear too.
let me reclaim my chat. Okay, nobody's put anything in the chat yet. Okay, well, one of the things that I will say is, you know, that sounds like it's something that was established based on the culture that they were in. So the culture of the organization made them feel like they couldn't kind of do things on their own, or they couldn't do things without being told, or they didn't want to do things and kind of strike out on their own because they didn't want the repercussions behind it. I could be right or wrong. I don't know, because I'm not familiar with the exact scenario, but what I will say is from experience, that's oftentimes what kind of lies at the foundation of some of those things.
I agree. I
Okay.
agree.
Okay. And so now you're coming in as a new leader, and folks are very, see, one thing is about mindset too, right? So when we're talking about mindset and we're talking about um, a culture that has been developed, it takes a lot of work to go back and undo some of that, right? But you have to have a plan, and you have to show them that it is okay for them to come up with these ideas, to go forward and do things, to give kudos when somebody goes forward. If there's an error made, instead of, berating folks and saying, oh my gosh, what were you thinking? Well, let's talk through what happened here, because oftentimes we learn through the errors that we make. But errors can be costly. And of course, you want to be efficient. You want to be good stewards over the company money, but you also want to find and develop your team in a way that they feel like it's okay to lead and not just be managed. But that is a mindset shift, and that is going to take a strategy and some very intentional work to get them to that point. And I don't know that we have time within what we're doing tonight and what we're talking about tonight to take that deeper dive. But, you know, it's going to be about how you show up as a leader and how you give them the space to be able to be self-managing, to be more autonomous, to show them that it's okay to do that, to reinforce those behaviors that lead them in that direction. And how do you go about doing that? And again, setting the expectations that, you know, I don't know, you know, exactly what you were used to. I'm coming in, and these are my expectations. This is the space that I lead from. And, you know, if you don't feel comfortable in doing that, let's talk about how we can get you there. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Do you see yourself in that environment being able to do that?
I left.
Okay, you left. Okay.
It was 7 years and I was still struggling.
Okay.
And I didn't have the support that I needed. So I made a decision.
And sometimes that's what we have to do, right? Because sometimes the culture is so far gone that there's not a lot we can do about it. But when it's our own business, or when we're in our own space and we're given the autonomy to be able to do that, that's when we can be change makers, right? But it does, it starts with us, right? Those changes start with us. The mindset starts with us, and being able to, because you were dealing with a group of people that never had the power. And so they're not going to just jump up and take it and take ownership. They're not going to do it, especially if they've seen that doing that does not create a positive situation for them, right? So there will have to be a whole paradigm shift to get them there, right?
I appreciate that. I feel better.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know, here's the thing. We can't be miracle workers, but we have to have leadership teams, and we have to build cultures, and we have to build leaders and be a leader ourselves that is able to manage those kinds of change and shifts in culture. You understand what I'm saying? But we have to have the resources and the support to be able to do that.
Exactly. The culture was too strong already, and it was no way for me to break into it. So I just
Right.
made a decision.
Right. And until the leaders there get it and they come to the trainings and they get that information for themselves, unfortunately, a lot of times you won't be able to make those changes. But as business leaders and as leaders yourself in your own right, you know how to go about doing this, and you can take those talents elsewhere, and you will know when you open your own businesses or companies or what have you, how you would like that culture to look and what you need to do to invest to make sure that it shows up that way.
Right.
Makes sense?
That's why I'm here to learn. Thank you so much.
Oh, you are very welcome. My pleasure. All right, so let's move forward, right, in our message, right? So this is a quote from Maya Angelou that I absolutely love, and I think that it sums up leadership and culture in such an eloquent way, right? Maya Angelou said, "I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel." And I think that we forget that part of it, right? Oftentimes we are so busy looking at the bottom line, and we're so busy being task oriented, and we're so busy just looking, you know, ahead, that we forget that we are dealing with human beings. We forget that we are trying to get people and our human capital to help us move the needle and work towards a goal, right? And sometimes we forget to be human, and we forget to treat them as human beings. And we are, you know, the old style of management used to be, you know, kind of do as I say and not as I do, and do it because I told you to do it. But the world is changing, and the workplace is changing, and you have different generations in the workplace. You have different folks with diverse backgrounds and cultures, and all I mean, the workplace is a melting pot of all sorts of things. And remembering to treat folks uniquely, right? And we always talk about the golden rule, but I subscribe to the platinum rule, right? It's not do treat others as you want to be treated, but how about the platinum rule, which says treat others as they'd like to be treated, right? Because everybody doesn't want to be treated like you. You know what I mean? And what you will accept and tolerate may be different for somebody else, right? And so remembering to always have that human element as a part of what you do and how you interact and how you deal with people is so very important when we're talking about building and developing the cultures within our organizations, but also developing as a leader. Right? So here's another bit of information I want to share with you on how important it is for leadership development, right? So there was a study done by Gallup that said that leadership training is critical to organizational success, that it can play a key role in the performance of leaders and managers, right? That each leader's capacity for success in their role is the result of natural talent combined with intentional development. And this goes to what I was talking about before, right? That we have to give them the tools, right? Too often organizations ignore or underinvest in the intentional development of leaders and managers. And you're left with the fallout, right? I'm sure many of you have heard the statistics about people who do not leave organizations because of the work, but because of the managers or the leadership, right? Because of how they're made to feel, right? When we're not intentionally working on and focusing on those things. You let money walk out of the door every time you lose an employee because your team of leadership is not developed in the way in which they need to be in order to manage the folks within your organization, right? Another key from a Gallup study made the following business case for executive or leadership coaching and development, right? And this is for all of the leaders, right? And this gives you some of the statistics I was talking about. When employees strongly agree that they trust the leadership of their organization, they are 4 times as likely to be engaged. 4 times as likely. Employees who strongly agree that leaders help them see how change made today will affect their organization in the future are 7.5 times as likely to feel connected to their company culture, right? That's employee engagement, right? That connection and that being able to see what these changes are, why we're making the changes, not that we're just doing it all willy-nilly, and where they fit within the roles and the changing environment, right? When employees strongly agree that the leadership of their organization communicates effectively with the rest of the organization, they are 73% less likely to feel burned out at work. Right? Because a lot of times the burnout starts in the mind, right? You burn people out mentally to the point that they just check out, right? And 69% of employees who strongly agree that their leaders make them feel enthusiastic about the future are engaged. Only 1% of those who disagree with that statement are engaged. Okay, so I wanted to share some of that information and those statistics with you to let you know that I'm not just pulling this stuff from the air. I'm not just making it up. I'm saying that we need to really be focusing on and investing in our leadership, investing in ourselves. As leaders, we should always be leveling up as well. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Any comments, any thoughts about any of that information that we've shared? I'd like to hear from you all. Denise? Denise, did you want to share? If you're sharing, we can't hear you.
I'm just glad I was a good boss.
You say what now?
I'm glad I was a good boss.
You glad you were, well, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Oh, that's okay, Denise. Did you want to share something? You can put it in the chat. Anybody else? Brett, you've been very quiet. Any thoughts? DR Garrett, Kiana, am I saying that right? Kiana Taylor? No thoughts on that, huh? Yes,
I just
okay.
I
Yes,
just want to say I agree with this slide.
okay,
Absolutely agree with this slide because I've been in work situations where this was absolutely true.
okay, okay. And until one of the things that is lost on me sometimes is the fact that, see, sometimes what happens, especially as small businesses, but even as large corporations, what happens is this: if we're making money, then we think we're doing a good job. If folks are being productive, then we think that we're doing a good job. The part that we miss is that we could be doing a better job. We could be more productive. We could be generating more profit if we invested in our people, if we invested in the training, if we invested in the leadership, right? We could be doing so much more. But because oftentimes we are short-sighted, right? And sometimes the leaders within our organization are short-sighted. They say, oh, no, we don't need that. And then there's a certain level of arrogance as well, particularly when you're looking at certain business leaders. Well, I started this with, a tin can and a bag of rice, and I've grown it to be this, right? But you didn't do it on your own. And it's important for you to keep leveling up, for you to be learning, for you to be taking development opportunities, for you to be reading, right? For you to be sharing that information and coming back and using it and applying it within the organization and sharing it with those other leaders within the organization, sharing it, and thinking about what's next for your company. How do you scale? How do you know that you're earning the very best that you could be earning if you are not investing appropriately to the training and development of the leaders within the company? So again, let's take a minute to kind of put this all together, shall we? All right. So organizational leadership and culture, right? The success of any business depends on its organizational culture. With the right leadership, a positive organizational culture can spread throughout the workplace. Leaders need to be able to encourage a positive organizational culture in order to keep employees motivated and engaged. Because at the end of the day, these are the folks that are getting the job done. These are the folks that are there. They're showing up for you, and how they show up depends on them to some respect, but also depends on you. How do you motivate people to come through the door? What kind of culture do you promote? Within that organization. And even if you are not your own business owner, but you are a leader within an organization and you have a team, how does your team view you? Do you allow them to give you feedback just like you give them feedback? Do you sit down and have those one-on-ones with them? Do you invest in leadership development training and seek out programs that you can get involved in, whether it be free or at cost? Right? How much skin in the game do you have for yourself? How much do you invest in yourself? Right? And, oftentimes we don't want to hear feedback about how we show up, but I was told a long time ago by a leader, I was having my own struggles, right? And I was trying to figure it out. And she said to me, people treat you like you show up. So if I show up and I don't speak and I just go and I hide behind my closed door, how do I expect for anybody to treat me any differently than that? If I can't give my folks a good morning or a good afternoon, if I can't show empathy in my interactions with them, if I can't help brainstorm, if I can't be human with the folks that I work with, right? Then what am I developing? Right? I am just as responsible for the culture within my organization and within my team as the person that I report to. People trust you how you show up. Absolutely. Absolutely. People treat you how you show up. Right? People treat you how you show up. All right. And Barbara, you said it sounds like in the end, the culture is already there when someone hires into the company. Is there room for the employees to create the culture? In my mind, it's an ongoing process. Well, here's the thing, Barbara, about that. What happens is the culture is established because it should be established when you are walking into the organization. And that culture should be built on the principles and the values and the mission of the company. But we also know that subcultures develop organically within those organizations, right? And that's where those leaders without titles come in, right? That's where you have to try to manage folks and the organization and the culture so that it doesn't get away from you, whether we want it to be or not. And that's where, and James referred to, kind of this bad culture and gossiping and all of those things. Those cultures are going to develop, those subcultures are going to develop within the organization, whether we want them to or not. But we do have the opportunity every day to show up in a way that tries to make sure that those subcultures are going to be positive and not negative, that we can get folks on board, that we can help to earn their buy-in to the vision and how we show up. If we as the leader are like, well, I don't know, management's telling us to do this, so I don't know, we're going to just have to try it and see. I don't think it's going to work either, but this is what we being told to do. Well, if you come in with that attitude, then that's the attitude that you're going to inspire along with that team. So are you going to be a part of the solution, or you're going to be a part of the problem? Because again, people treat you how you show up. And so they're looking for you for guidance and how they should be feeling. If you're panicking over everything, they're going to panic too. And so when we're talking about culture again, culture equals behavior. And again, subcultures come from and through rewards, right? Culture is learned through interaction and how you make people feel, right? And how you're made to feel. And the people shape the culture. And culture is often negotiated by actions, right? And so this just kind of puts that all together. Culture is difficult to change once it has been established. And so that's why we want to be intentional about the culture. We want to be intentional about the ideas. We want to be intentional about the folks that we bring into the culture to make sure that they are going to support the vision and the goals and the values. We are not just hiring to put a person in a seat. That will cost you more money in the end instead of making the right hire. And that's when we're talking about intentional hiring and how that ties into culture and leadership and all of those things. So we have to be very mindful, because a culture is a different thing to change once it's been in place for a long time and it's been allowed to grow, whether it be positive or negative. And when you let those unofficial leaders within the organization take over, they plant seeds. They plant seeds that grow and grow and grow, whether that be in a positive or a negative way. Culture could also work in social organizations. Absolutely. And guess what? Culture does. Culture does operate in those spaces. You are correct. And you're a seminar of culture. Yes, yes. And actually, you know, I've been asked, I've spoken at a church that was, you know, wanting to make some changes within their leadership and culture. But yeah, a lot of times, and especially if you have folks that have been there for a long time and they feel like they're going to outlive you, they've seen 10 or 11 or 12 of you come and go, and they love to tell you that every time you turn around.
Yeah.
Right? When you have those folks that hold the history and they know how things have done, and then you try to make a change and they say, you know what, we did that back in 1975. It didn't work then and it ain't gonna work now. You know what I mean? So, you know, when you have folks within the organization that have that kind of history and longevity, you know, oftentimes they have become the voice within the organization. You have allowed them to be and plant those seeds of negativity, and they just kind of take over, and then the culture shifts. So you have to be able to manage that. And how do you do that? You got to develop yourself and develop your skills and go out here and figure out what ways will best work for you. So outcomes of a supportive environment on individuals. Number one, outcomes of a supportive environment, it creates a supportive culture and society that leads to one's identity, is affirmed by others or circumstances when surrounded by a conducive environment. Then it moves into intelligence, happiness, health, and kindness within society that leads us to, with positive effects on identity, affirmation, the culture becomes one with more positive contributions from individuals, and this becomes the cycle, right? So when you have some positive and supportive environments, it affects all aspects of the communities that you are building, both within the company culture and outside of that, like you said, in your other social situations as well. And so, you know, part of bringing this all together is also you taking a look at, you know, what leadership style works best for you. There are several leadership styles that are out there and available, and you want to figure out where you land in that space. What kind of a leader are you? Who are you as a leader? And we're going to take a look at that later on in the series. You know, I'll show you a little video, and we have a little bit of a, you know, just a real quick assessment that we can take a look at. Now, why again is leadership important for organizational culture? Because leaders show employees how to embody values that contribute to organizational culture. It is the duty of a leader to communicate the company's mission, goals, and core values. Leaders are responsible for defining, teaching, measuring, and rewarding the culture that they want to foster. And all of those pieces are so important. And it is not enough to meet once in a while or once a quarter. You should be constantly measuring and rewarding feedback. And rewards don't always come in the form of monetary rewards, right? Not everybody is looking to be rewarded with money. Sometimes it's just a kudos. Sometimes it's just the I see you. Sometimes it is just recognition in a meeting. Sometimes it's a day off. Sometimes it is, you know what, you get to come in a little later today or leave a little early today. You know, rewards can look a lot of different ways that don't necessarily have to cost the company great amount of money, but who doesn't want to be recognized for the great things that they do and they bring to the organization? Right? And all of these things, the defining, the teaching, the measuring and rewarding, are all a part of the leader's responsibility and how you affect culture and development of your employees. Managers can teach organizational culture through their social interactions with their employees. Through their own actions, leaders show employees what behavior is accepted and encouraged. So again, gone are the days of do as I say and not as I do. No, we are looking at you to set the standard. You need to be leading by example. And here are 7 ways that leadership affects organizational culture. It defines and teaches the core values. Again, fosters a desire to learn, promotes a culture of recognition, encourages a shared vision, changes the culture, improves job satisfaction, and ensures accountability. Okay? Michelle, I gave awards for leaders in each area of the job. That is fantastic. That's fantastic. And sometimes do you know how far a certificate of appreciation can go? That costs you nothing but some paper and a little computer ink, right? To be able to say, hey, I caught you doing something great. This is a certificate of appreciation because you do this for the team. This is your role. This is what the team depends on you for, right? Here's this quote: "You are what you consistently do," which makes excellent not an act, but a habit. Little misspelling there, but it makes it an act, not a habit. Or I'm sorry, a habit, not an act, rather. All right. So as we wrap up tonight's session, I just want to open the floor, and I'm going to just stop sharing for a brief moment to be able to open up the floor and have some open discussion and dialogue with you all. Who feels like they were able to get something? I want everybody to take just a moment and drop one takeaway, just one thing that you were able to take away in the chat. And when you write that takeaway down, I also want you to think about what is one action that you're going to take within your own leadership building that you're going to commit to doing this week. Well, between this week and next week, like what's that one thing? What's your one takeaway, and what is the one thing that you're going to commit to? Yes, Denise, I see you do. You have several above. I love it. Duties. I love it. I love it. I love it. Yes. Glad that we talked about positivity and how core leadership is. It starts with us. Absolutely. Inside, then grows to others. Standards. A leader is a motivator of others. Absolutely. Create the culture. Absolutely. Absolutely. And you know what? The one thing that I want to also say to you all is that oftentimes it's just like teaching, right? When let's say you teach at a college level, right? They don't teach you how to teach, right? They expect that you come in with a certain level of knowledge and understanding, and then they just say, here, have at it, right? But someone has to teach you how to teach. If they don't, guess what? You fall into the behaviors that you've always seen when you were in class and when you were taking class. You think about some of your best teachers and some of the worst ones that you've ever had, your best leaders and some of the worst you've ever had. When you don't take the time to intentionally develop yourself and develop your teams, then they just rely on the things that they've always seen, whether that be good, bad, or ugly, right? So we have to make those investments. All right, I see everybody still going in the chat. Your takeaway, Kiana, is the leadership style. And this week you plan on leveling up. I love it. Now, you say, I plan on leveling up. What does that mean? What is that going to look like? What is the one action that you're going to take this week to level up? Micromanagement will adopt. Okay, what do you mean by that, Desiree? Micromanagement will adopt.
Instead of it all just being me, to go ahead and delegate more work to more people.
Okay, okay, got it, got
You
it.
know, where you said the leadership and the management, I'm more
Yes,
managed. So
okay.
I need more leadership.
And that is that's an awesome reflection, because we have to start by looking at us first, right?
Right,
And think about the feedback that you've gotten from folks that have worked for you before or reported to you before, the stuff that we just kind of shrug off, right? Everybody can't be wrong, right? So if you're hearing some things consistently, maybe these are the areas that we need to focus on, whether they be the
right,
positive ones or the negative ones. If you hear something constantly, my mom used to say, reality is one thing, perception is everything. Right.
right,
So you may think that you show up as this great positive leader and that you give people all this space and autonomy and that you are just such a great leader. But if you are getting and you're perceived to be different than that, and your team feels like, no, 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 you're not really that great. No, 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 I really wouldn't follow you out of a burning building. You got a problem, right? And you have
right.
to take some of that and own some of that,
Some of
and
that.
right, and figure it out. And sometimes the best place to start is by asking the people that are closest to you that you really trust. You know what I'm saying? Would you work for me? Why or why not? What are some of the things that you feel like maybe I could use a little attention on? You know what I'm saying? You don't need a bunch of yes men around you. You don't need a bunch of people that are going to be your amen corner. You need people that are going to be honest, but they're going to support you and your development, and they're going to do so in kindness and in love. You know what I mean? Um, so that's the only way you get to know how to be a better you.
Better you.
Yes, absolutely. Create a culture of problem solvers. Oh my
Oh,
gosh,
yes. I
the
didn't catch that.
niece. Yes, with unlimited external and internal benefits. And I want you to know that the last two parts in this series are just about that, creating problem solvers. Right. That's a two-parter in this series. So I hope that you will be able to come in and join us. That's going to be at the end of February. But yes, that is a part of the series. And we have Tracy Watts Carino that's going to be with me and facilitating those sessions. And we're going to have a good time. But yes, leveling up, being consistent is your main idea. That's right. And consistency starts with a plan, right? You have to plan it out. You have to be intentional. Awards place more emphasis. Okay. All right. All right.
Right.
I'm loving what I'm seeing in the chat. You guys are on fire, right? Leadership role and relationship to build a culture. Yep. Brett, I love it. Right. Action to follow up on understanding my leadership style and next. Excellent. Excellent. Leading and managing. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. And so we will be meeting again next week to talk about understanding your why. So look for your email, right? In your email to make sure you sign up for that. I will be on deck again with, I'll have a co-pilot with me, Tracy Watts Carino. We are a dynamic duo, and we will talk about understanding your why. And that's just going to build on this culture and leadership series. And it takes a deeper dive into your business, but also you. Right. And so I'm looking forward to sharing some more insights with you all. Is there anyone else that has something that they'd like to say or share before we end tonight's session? Now, our sessions go from 7 to 9, but I do not believe in belaboring the point. So I want to give you back this time in your life. Oh, and thank you, Soft Skill One. This was great. I love the culture in this room. Fantastic.
Right.
I love it too. And I thank you all for coming and being so willing to share and participate and indulge. Like I say, I want this to be a two-way conversation because I learn just as much as I give, and we all come to the table with something of value to bring. So I thank you. I look forward to seeing as many of you that are able to join us next week. Again, check your email to sign up and get the registration done for that session. And I just hope that you can join us as much as possible. And Barb, you are so welcome. I am so humbled. I appreciate you for listening and for
It was
sharing.
very easy.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else? I will hang out here for a few more minutes. But for those of you that are done and have gotten what you needed to get, please feel free to go ahead and enjoy your evening. I'll hang around for a few minutes for those of you that may have additional questions. You're welcome, B. Cruz. Thank you, Michelle. You too. Do I mentor as well? I do not mentor with SCORE at this time just because I do work a full-time job on top of my entrepreneurial stuff. So this is my give back, the workshops and whatnot. However, I have done some co-mentoring. So if you're interested in getting a mentor and I can kind of come in on a few sessions, if there's something that you feel that I can add, most certainly, please feel free to reach out. All right, you're welcome, DR Garrett. Sending blessings back to you, Denise. Good night.